Welcome to Time to Press Pause, a podcast for CEOs by CEOs. I'm your host, Ellen Williams, CEO of The Salient Strategist, and today I'm speaking with Melinda F. Emerson. Melinda is CEO of Quintessence Group. She's also Small Biz Lady, America's #1 small business expert, host of the Small Biz Chat podcast, and best-selling author of Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months and Fix Your Business. She's an internationally renowned keynote speaker on business development, social media selling, and marketing strategy. Her marketing consulting firm serves Fortune 500 brands that target small businesses. She has an online school, www.smallbizladyuniversity.com, that teaches business owners online marketing. Welcome, Melinda, to Time to Press Pause.
Hi, Ellen. Thank you so much for having me.
It is certainly my pleasure. A longtime friend and colleague. You and I met 10 or so years ago when I was with Constant Contact. I remember it was at an event in Westchester and you were presenting before me and you needed a clicker. And I came to the rescue with a clicker and we connected. And over the last 10 years, we've been colleagues and friends. And I'm really excited to have you here today. So without further ado, please, I'm so interested in hearing your press pause story.
Oh man, I've had many. When I got pregnant with my son, and I'm going to take you back to circa 2005. This was before Wi-Fi was in people's houses. So back then, I had offices in Center City, Philadelphia. I had 8, 9 employees. My husband at the time had left his full-time job, and he was full-time in our business too. And then all of a sudden, I got pregnant with my son and ended up with a high-risk pregnancy and got put on bed rest. So my press pause was kind of forced upon me, but it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It didn't feel that way at the time, and I want to say that. But upon reflection now, gosh, what, 16, 17 years later, it was definitely something that needed to happen because prior to me being, sent home and put on bed rest, I was probably the worst workaholic you ever met. You could call my office at 8 o'clock at night and people would answer the phone like it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Not only was I a workaholic, I demanded it of everybody that worked for me too. That was no way to live. But back then, I had this warped sense of my secret power was we're gonna outwork people. We're gonna outwork them. That was my secret sauce, which I now know was the road to insanity. And I was young and I had a lot to prove. And I think I had a lot of imposter syndrome back then. And so that's like kind of how you can become this Captain Bligh workaholic monster. I was good to my people. Look, I would buy them lunch and dinner every night so they wouldn't leave. But that wasn't the right way to run an organization or to actually have a life. At that time in my life, I was probably living to work versus working so that I could live my best life. But then I got pulled out, put on bed rest, and really threatened by my doctor, who was like, "You have to listen to us." So I did what she said. I mean, I barely raised my voice above a whisper at anybody because I was so scared of hurting my son, who is now 18 years old and just went off to college. That sort of like year and a half of all of that was really scary. So obviously I wasn't pregnant the whole year, right? So it was about 6 months that I got put on bed rest, and then by the time I had my son, my business was in shambles because I had broken the number one rule, right? I had built a business that could not run without me, and I had built a culture in my business that you had to come ask mama, right? And so I was mama and mama wasn't there. So nobody was kind of doing anything. I mean, these guys weren't even checking my email. People were sending us RFPs and they weren't checking my email. And so, we were burning through our savings to like keep all our employees and stuff. But while I was home, it was the first time that I was actually forced to rest, forced to think, had the luxury to sit and think and actually take notes around things. And I started thinking about in that time all the expensive mistakes I had made in my business. And man, that list was long. I mean, it was scary how long it was. It was probably as long as my arm right here, like, from the wrist back to I wrote everything down that I could think of. I even wrote down lessons that other friends of mine had learned in business. Then the baby came. Then I had to learn how to raise my first baby. And I don't know if anybody tells anybody this, but the first year of your first baby's life is hell because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what is an emergency, what is it. You don't know what to call the doctor about versus what to call your mama about versus when it's going to just be okay and you don't have to call anybody, right? You got to learn that. That's a OJT kind of a thing. But what I also realized about that time was that I had a lot of stuff that was broken in my life. So my business was broken. How I was working my business was broken. And then I also realized that I had a broken marriage too. And I was basically unhappy everywhere. And it was one of those things where I'm the type of person, I'm a Libra, I'm a type A overachiever, right? I like to make lists because I like to cross them off, right? I'm that person. And it was the first time in my life I didn't have a plan B or C. I really, truly didn't know what to do next. I didn't want to do my business the way I was doing it anymore. Frankly, I didn't want to even be in that marriage anymore. But I knew I had to fix one thing at a time. I couldn't fix everything, right? So, what I decided to do was think about my business first, but how I would reinvent my business and myself. And I literally started praying and asking God for help because I was like, that was the only person we're left to turn to, who I should have frankly turned to first, but I turned to last. And I went and had lunch with my pastor. And I'll never forget this because I remember I was telling my pastor, well, this is bad and this is bad and this is bad. And he said, well, have you tried praying about it? And I remember being like, well, see, what happened was, no, actually. And he was like, try that. Let me know how that go. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's what a pastor would say. But I literally went home and I started praying and I asked God, what was I supposed to do next? Where were my gifts supposed to take me next? And it took about 2.5 months. And then I got a vision and a dream 3 times to become America's #1 small business expert. God gave me the plan and the vision to become the small biz lady. And I didn't know it at the time because it wasn't like he gave me the name small biz lady. That came a little later. But the point was, what he helped me realize was that the most valuable thing in my business was what I learned from running it. And so then I said, okay, well, how can we bottle and sell that? Well, the first thing he reminded me was of all those notes I took when I was pregnant. So they had been in a box for 2 years. And I went and pulled them out, started building a manuscript for my best-selling book, Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months, which I'm very proud to say has been in print since 2010. And it is in its third edition with Simon & Schuster. And I have sold over 100,000 copies of that book. And I'll tell you, I think the reason why that book has done so well is because I'm not the hero at the end of every story in it. I told the truth about a bunch of dumb stuff and about a bunch of expensive lessons that I learned. And I think people appreciated the fact that I didn't write this 50-foot book. Oh, now I'm successful. Let me tell you how I did it. No, I wrote a book that was like from the salt mines. Like, let me tell y'all how hard this is. But I also very intentionally wrote a book to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, particularly women entrepreneurs. Because what I realized was that I would have run my business better if I had had better advice. But back then, I mean, I started my business in 1999, and there wasn't anybody in mass media talking about small business. What if you have a big idea and you want to hit it big? There was nobody out there giving information about that. So when God gave me the vision, I did my research to make sure I understood what he was telling me. And then the first thing I did was write my book. I got a book editor to give me a book deal. I didn't have a following. I didn't have an email list. I didn't have an agent. I didn't even have a book proposal. I had a good idea, and I had 4 chapters, and I had a media kit about myself. and I got a book deal, which now what I know about getting book deals now, nobody would have even talked to me. What sold it was my idea. Like I said, look, I think there's another way to start a business, and I don't think anybody's talking about it. What was so heartening for me was when I wrote this book, the book got bumped because the market crashed. So my book was due to my publisher September 1st, 2008. And I turned it in on time because I got a journalism degree undergrad. I knew how to write a book, right? I knew how to write anyway. And 14 days later, the market crashed. And then 10 days later after that, my publisher called me and said, listen, thank you so much for being a first time author that actually turned your book in on time. But we don't think anyone's thinking about entrepreneurship right now. So we're going to shelf your book until March of 2010. That was 18 months from when I turned it in. And that was a nightmare. By then, my husband had gone back into corporate America and had gotten laid off. So, I mean, it was like a bad time. The other problem was I had wound down my other company, my video production company, thinking I was about to go out on this national book tour and I was about to become America's #1 small business expert. Not so fast. That's not what happened. So I remember I was a member of the National Speakers Association and I went to a meeting and told everybody my sad story. And a woman who was at the meeting said, if I were you, I would start publicizing that book like it was coming out anyway. I would learn this new social media thing everybody's talking about, and maybe you could use that to build a platform for yourself before the book comes out. Now, this is 2008. Twitter was 1 years old. It was like, what is social media? That's what people were saying back then. And so I hired a woman. I'll never forget when I talked to her because she was like hyped up. She was like, oh, you mean the book's not coming out for a year and a half? Really? We have time to build your platform? And again, even back then, the word author platform wasn't even two words that people used together. I thought the woman was crazy, to be very honest with you. Her name was Kathy Larkin, and she's been a dear, dear friend of mine over the years. So the day came for me to get my own Twitter account. So I go to twitter.com. She's on the phone with me. She's on twitter.com. I put in Melinda Emerson, and I get this polite note back. This name is already taken. Was like, what? Are you kidding me? First of all, my name, Melinda, is not common. I probably have met 6 other Melindas older than me, like my whole life. My name was never on the keychain at the gas station, when you're a kid. Like, my name is not common. So the fact that there was another Melinda Emerson and that troll had gotten to Twitter before me was ridiculous. In that instance, we had to come up with a new name for me, a nickname, if you will. And I remember Kathy was like, well, let's come up with some names. And I said, you mean like Mindy or Melly Mel or something? And she said, no, fool, you're not a rapper. I'm not gonna give you a name like that. And I was like, okay, calm down. I said, well, what kind of name? And she said, we need to think of a name that has good keywords in it. What are you talking about? So she said, it needs to be small business something, small business guru or small biz expert. And I was like, I don't like it. I don't like any of that. And then she said, well, how about small biz lady? I was like, well, I think I could be her. Okay, let's use that. Boom. Small biz lady. That was the day I became small biz lady. And what we now know is that that's the best branding thing that ever could have possibly happened to me. Because, okay, let's fast forward the 18 months. My book did come out, and I have a brand that reaches 1 million entrepreneurs each week online. And I tell people all the time, there's thousands of small business experts, but there's only one small biz lady, and that's me.
Wow. So I have no doubt that the pause was the best thing that ever happened to you, because what came after the pause, the birth of your son and the birth of this new persona, which has continued to carry you all these years. That's a lot of great outcome and real soul searching that happened during that pause.
Oh yeah, I believe that the only way God was able to stop me was to get me pregnant with my son. Like, he was like, I'm gonna stop her because she's gonna kill herself or somebody else. All this overworking foolishness is crazy. Like, I have to stop her. And he did. He stopped me dead in my tracks. and I was scared to death I was going to hurt that baby. So I didn't do anything. Ooh, it was rough. But I'm so grateful for the journey. When God gave it to me, He sent me everybody I needed to help me execute it too. He did, and He still does. He still sends people that out of the blue. I was just thinking about you, and we thought you'd be perfect for this opportunity. Do you want to do this with us? Yes. I will tell you that I had to have extreme faith because I didn't make any money as the small biz lady for almost 2 years. So I had to keep doing it, tweeting, blogging, answering people's questions. I hosted a live tweet chat on Twitter for 10 years.
I was on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work, man.
Yeah, you were certainly, your work was pioneering, as you said. The idea you had, the approach you had, you saw that you had learned things that you said earlier. I wish I had known that, or I wish someone had given me that advice when I started my own business. And here you are in a position to capture that information and put it out into the world as advice, and understanding that could really have an impact. And it sounds like it was more of having an impact on the next generation of entrepreneurs more than it was having an impact on your bottom line, even though you successfully have done that as well. Your vision was correct, and it's lovely to hear a story that is wrapped around faith.
Faith has never let me down, even though I haven't always been obedient to it. Let's be honest. I will tell you that when all chips are down, God's love is the only love that never changes. It's new every day. His blessings are new every single day. And what I can tell you is that I almost believe that he has enlarged my territory so I'll tell more people my story. It's funny, I write a blog, right? And I've been posting on my blog ever since 2009. But in 2010, I wrote a blog post called The 10 Bible Verses Every Small Business Owner Needs for 2010. And I write it every year, and I release it on Martin Luther King Day every year. And it's the most popular content I have ever written. I write about being a Christian one day a year, and it is the most popular content that I have ever written.
I love that, and I appreciate that. I don't preach a religion, but I appreciate the level of faith you have in yours and the impact that it's had in your life. And I think your story is very inspirational. So I'm going to leave us with one quick question here. What advice do you have for CEOs whereby they can identify when it's time to press pause?
It's okay to press pause. Sometimes in life and in business, you have to reinvent yourself and your business. And sometimes if you take that pause and think about what you really love to do and what other skills you have other than the skill you're doing right now, you'd be amazed where it could lead. It could lead you to a whole new multi-million-dollar business. Trust that.
That's amazing. It definitely came from the heart. Melinda, I've always enjoyed speaking with you, and it's been a pleasure over the last 10 years as our paths have crossed. And I'm very thankful for you to have been here today on Time to Press Pause.
It was my pleasure, Ellen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Time to Press Pause. To learn more about Melinda, go to succeedasyourownboss.com. To learn more about me, go to thesalientstrategist.com. And be sure to join us again wherever you listen to your podcasts.